Okay, thank you. Welcome to my last lecture. And the topic of today's lecture, as I said yesterday already, is momentum. So, if you have read or if you went through our script that I put on Moodle, you see that I've provided here a code in the end of the script, and what you also see here is some excerpts from the paper, from the 93 paper that you were supposed to read for this lecture here. So before we go through the coding and through momentum itself, I would like to talk about a little bit about risk adjustments. So let's assume you have a trading strategy, or you figured out a cross-sectional pattern in assets, let's say in stocks or in commodities, and you want to see if the payoffs are significant or not. So what people usually do is they risk adjust the payoff series. Yeah? So they estimate this long-short strategy, and what they then do is they regress it on the asset pricing model. Yeah? So let's say we have the excess returns. Let's denote the excess returns of our long-short portfolio as Rx, and let's say of an anomaly. Yeah. And this is a long-short portfolio. Yeah. So you are short in certain stocks and you use this money equivalent and invest it in a long position. What you do is you regress it with an asset pricing model, including intercept term, the alpha. Then you usually have the market factor. If we consider the stock universe, you usually have the market factor, which is the stock index, or in the US we have also this risk index. And it's the anomaly at time t, so we have the market factor at time t in excess time, plus, let's say we also use the size factor, that's S&P, that's denoted S&P as a portfolio that is long on small stocks and short on big stocks. So S&P at time t, and for instance, we also use the value factor. Let's do it as VLA and VAL at time t, and what we also include is an error term, epsilon t. So this is what we usually need for our regression equation. Yeah. So in this case we employ the Farmer and French three-factor model. Yeah. So if we just account for the first variable here, which is the market factor, and neglect from those here, then we would just use the CAP-M as a pricing model. And if we would use nowadays the Farmer and French five-factor model, we would add here two more regressors, namely the investment factor and the profitability factor. Or we could also use the Farmer and French six-factor model. Then we would add three more variables here, namely the investment factor, the profitability factor, as well as the momentum factor. Yeah. And what we also include is of course, the intercept term, denoted here by the Y, which is the point estimate for the intercept term. So, if the long-short strategy, or our anomaly variable here, if this guy here, this intercept term, if this is significantly different from zero, then we have, this is basically it, and this means that this part of the excess return of this guy on the left-hand side is unexplained by the exposures, by the beta loadings, against our systematic risk factors here. And all these risk factors here, they measure some sort of systematic risk. And whenever our intercept term is significantly positive, then we talk about that our strategy generates excess returns, or risk-adjusted excess returns. Because if we figure out any cross-sectional patterns that generates a certain payoff, like let's say 1.5% per month or so, it doesn't mean anything, because it could be that this payoff series is explained by a linear combination of loadings against certain systematic risk factors here. So a payoff series like some gross returns doesn't tell us anything. So we have to account for our systematic risk factors here. And then we can draw some conclusions. Yeah? Once the intercept term, which is normally distributed, and if the intercept term is, let's say, if the t-statistic is, let's say, for instance, 2.5 or so, yeah, we know it falls into this critical area. The value would be larger than 1.96, so we would conclude that this payoff, that the risk-adjusted payoff, is statistically significant on a 5% level. Yeah. So that's what we do. So if you work in the finance industry and you can come up with a new trading rule or something, then somehow you have to test if the payoff still exists once you control for the well-known systematic risk factors. So the momentum strategy that you were supposed to get familiar with at home deals with, it's basically sort of autocorrelation pattern. So what Jäger and Tiefmann, 93 paper, what they figured out is that returns, or that stocks in the US that generated high returns in the past, let's say, 12 months period, that have high cumulative returns in this last 12 months period, tend to outperform those stocks that generated very low or negative cumulative returns during the last 12 months period. So that's the momentum effect. And in the paper they discuss two different strategies. So in the one strategy, they accumulate the returns over the past 6 months and keep it, for instance, 1 month ahead, or 3 months ahead, or 6 months ahead. And on the other hand, they compare it with a strategy that accumulates the return over the entire 12 months period. And then again, keeping this portfolio either 1 month ahead, 3 months ahead, 6 months ahead, and so on. So the strategy that we are interested in, and also the strategy that you read in most of the papers, is basically a strategy that accumulates the returns over the past 12 months, skips the most recent months, and holds it 1 month ahead. So I read once a master thesis of someone who also wanted to write his paper, or his master thesis about momentum, and he argued that the most used or most popular strategy is a strategy that keeps the portfolio 3 months ahead. No, it's not true. It's 1 month ahead. So you can easily get confused, but you just have to listen what's going on here, and everything you need to know I will tell you here in Stacker. So, but it's 1 month later. So how to implement this strategy? So in the paper, in the main section they discuss about the strategy that looks on the previous 6 months. So let's say this is our timeline of our data sample for our stocks, starting at T1, and we determine that today T0 should be here. And let's also define the distance between where the data sample starts and where we are today as n. So n is equal to 12, which means between where we are today and where the data sample starts is 12 months. So, and as I told you earlier already, of course you can write different codes, you can choose different procedures, and you could end up with the same results. So this is just one example, and I will tell you later on in the end of the lecture why I chose to formulate the code like I did here. So again, let's say T0, where we are today, is here. It's T12 in the data sample. So we cumulate the returns for all stocks from the months at t minus 1, and because the data sample starts at t is 12, it's from t equal to 11 until t minus 6. So which is, you can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You cumulate 5 months of returns. So it's the cumulative is the sum of these 5 months from t is equal to 6 until t is equal to 11. Yeah. So, and you cumulate these returns in this time period for all the stocks in your sample. Now, if you have the S&P 500, you would create a vector that has 500 entries with the corresponding cumulative return of this period here for all the stocks. So what you do then is you rank these stocks. Yeah, this was something reverse. From lowest to highest. So you want to buy those stocks that have the highest cumulative return within this period here. And you finance this position by shorting those stocks that have the lowest cumulative return in this time period here. And we do it in the same manner as we did it all the time. We code a binary variable, yeah, of zeros and ones, which gives us the position of those stocks that are in the high cumulative return group and also those that are in the low cumulative return group. What we do then is, after we form the zero cost strategy, the zero cost portfolio, we keep it constant 1 month ahead. So from T0, which is T12 in our case, until T13. So this is our forecast period. Forecast or slash holding period. Our holding period return 1 month ahead. So after we did that, this is the first iteration. Yeah. Some of the stocks in our portfolios will change the position. So some of the stocks will go from the high group to the medium group, and some might even go from the high group into the low group, and vice versa. So we have to rebalance the portfolio in the next period. So what happens then? Our T0 moves from T is 12 until T is 13. Now our T0, where we are today, is here, and that's equal, and that's in our timeline. T is equal to 13. Now we move one month ahead. Now we are here, and we have to cumulate the returns in this period. And it's again, if you count correctly, it's again the cumulative return of 5 months, skipping the most recent months. So the forecast period is then T14. It's n plus 2. This is n plus 1. And T14 is n plus 2. Or n plus t, because it's our second iteration, and we are at t is 2. And here we can also write n plus t, because it's 13 and n is 12, t is, and we are at t is 1, so 12 plus 1 is 13, and that's our focus period in the first iteration. The second iteration is 14, it's n plus 2, and t is equal to 2, and n is 12, so it's n plus 2 or n plus t. So we do the same thing all over again. Yeah? We consider all stocks that we have in our portfolio or in our asset universe. We sort them from lowest to highest cumulative return within this period. And again, we buy those stocks that are in the high portfolio. We sell those stocks with a low portfolio. We code again a binary dummy that gives us a position of where to find those stocks, forming the long-haul portfolio, keep it 1 month ahead. And the third iteration is exactly the same thing. Now we are at t is equal to 3, and we do the same thing all over again. Yeah? Now we accumulate the returns from in this period here. Now we are at t is 14. This is now our t0. T0 is t is equal to 14. So the forecast period is 50, t is 15, and that's equal with n plus 3 or n plus t, because t is 3 and n is 12. So we do the same thing and move it step by step 1 month forward. And that's in this paper from Grobys that is on the reading list. He refers to that strategy as 6 minus 2 strategy. 6 minus 2. Now it's actually a 6 1 strategy. What does that mean? So it means you have one forecast period, so one month holding period, and you skip 1 month. You have one skipping month in between, because the most recent months you do not account for when you accumulate the returns. And you go until t minus 6. It's always, with this t0, you go until six months into the past. It's always 6 months into the past from t minus 0, considered from t minus 0. It's always a 6 month period here. So another strategy that is discussed in this Untitled paper is the 12-1-1 strategy, and in Grobys' terms, he refers to that as 12 minus 2 strategy. And it's the same issue actually. So the only thing that changes then, again, if let's say the first iteration, our t0 is at time t12. What you would do then is, you would accumulate the returns from t12, from t equal to 11 until here. So you would accumulate the whole period here. And based upon that, you would compound the cumulative returns for all of your stocks in your stock universe. Then you would determine which of these stocks has the highest return, which of those stocks are in the highest return group and in the lowest cumulative return group. And then you would form your binary variables and giving you where to find the high and the low cumulative return stocks. Yeah? Is the logic clear to everybody what's going on here? Yeah. And then we have another strategy that Mark discussed in his paper, and that's the so-called 12 minus 7 strategy. So what that means is, again, if we are here, it's our T0, is our timeline. So we would go until months, which is T minus 7 from where we are today. Yeah. So we would go until T5 and accumulate the returns from the beginning of the sample from T minus 12 until T minus 7, which is T5 from if we are from the beginning at the sample. So we would accumulate the returns from here and skip this 6 month period here. So we would accumulate our returns based upon in the intermediate cumulative path return, skipping the first six months. Yes, 12 7 strategy. But our focus is now on this 6 minus 2 strategy. And I will show you that in the code, how you can easily manipulate the code in order to get those different guys here. But this is clear to everybody how that works. So again, we are back using our standard sample of 14 stocks. It's of course a very small sample. Actually, the first step we can skip. We don't need the stock market index here for this code. We only need the stocks, so we want to get the matrix of stocks. And in this case, if we operate with long-term strategy, we do not even need the excess returns. Because if you subtract the risk-free rate from the long and from the short portfolio, it cancels out. So if you formulate a long-short strategy, you can use the gross returns. So what we do here is we access our returns, which are the gross returns, from our data matrix. Data we have defined is this Excel file, and we know that in columns 2 to 15 are the stocks located, the stocks from the Swedish economy. So again, we define the lengths that we have available. So we have 250 observations. So capital T, we define it as length of y. Or we can simply write 215. So our capital K is equal to 14. It defines the number of stocks that we have in our sample. We use always the same sample. So we know already that it's 14 stocks. And we define our rolling time window. So now capital N is equal to 12. So that means we want to define now the time period where from the beginning of the sample, from where we are today. So, and I told you in this code, we start, our first iteration starts at time t is 12. This is where we are today, t0. So this is our capital N. Then, like always, we want to store our results in a result matrix. So we define here results underscore groups equal to zeros t minus capital N comma 3. So we construct a matrix consisting of zeros, and the column index is 3. So that means we have 3 columns here consisting of zeros. and the length is t minus n. So why is the length of this result matrix t minus n? Who has an idea? So obviously, we lose the first n observations if we determine, okay, we start here, our t0 is capital N. So we lose the first 12 observations of our sample. So our forecast period starts here. So it has capital T minus n minus 12 observations. So now we start our sorting procedure. So the outer for loop is obviously from t is equal to 1 to t minus n. So the first step is we want to store the cumulative return for the first iteration. Now t is 1. We define we are now the first iteration. Small t is 1, and we want to store the cumulative returns for each of the stocks in our universe. And what we do is first, of course, we define a zero vector, a vector of zeros, and we call it simply momentum. Momentum is equal to zeros, 1, k. So it's a row vector here, okay? Because we have, in the column index is capital K, that is 14, and in the index and in the row index we have 1. So we have 1 row, 14 columns, so it's a row vector of 14 zeros. Over 14. So then we have here a new for loop. So now we want to determine the cumulative return of each of the stocks. We have capital K stocks in our sample, so this for loop must be from I, the running index is now I, is 1 to capital K. So we do something capital K times. And this here is basically the heart of the code, where we compound the cumulative returns of each of the stocks. So we start with momentum 1i. So actually we can skip this here because it's a simple row vector, so we don't necessarily have to have this 1 here in the parentheses. Matlab automatically knows or recognizes that as a row vector here. So but it's not an error if you write it anyway. So we want to store something in each of these zeros. So the first entry here should be the cumulative returns of the first stock. The second entry should be the cumulative returns of the second stock, and so on and so forth. And the last entry here, we want to have the cumulative returns of our capital K stock, which is 40. So, and what is it then for the first stock? It's the sum of y, and y we remember is our return matrix, and I is 1, so we access the first column in the first iteration when I is 1, so we access the first column of our access return matrix, and there's where we find the first stock. And what do? We sum, and what do we sum? So we go from 1 plus 5, so because in the outer loop, t is now, small t is 1, there is 1 plus 5 to 1 plus 12 minus 2. and that's 11. N is 12, small t is 1. It's the first iteration in the outer loop. So it's 1 plus 12 is 13, minus 2 is 11. So that's exactly what we have done here. Because we accumulated the returns in this period here, right? This was the first iteration. And we accumulate from the 6 to 11. So and we do this for all stocks. I is running from 1 to capital K. So we do this same thing. We go successively in our Y matrix where our gross returns are stored for each column. So we do it for the first column, compound cumulative returns, put it in here. Then we go to the next column where the gross return for the second stock. Again, we compound, we take the sum of it, which is the cumulative returns of the second stock, and we put it in here. And so on. We do it until capital K for all of our 14 stocks. So and then this loop here, this inner loop here is completed. What we get then is our momentum vector has now the cumulative returns for all of the stocks for the first iteration. Yeah. So what do we do next? So we have to determine, we want to sort these stocks in our stock universe in an increasing order from lowest to highest cumulative return. So we sort this vector. And we know this comment already. All the comments that come now we know already from earlier exercises. So we define a new vector. We denote it as momentum underscore 1 is equal to sort momentum. So now this vector that we just created here, where we store the cumulative returns for all stocks in our stock universe, we will sort now, and we store it as momentum underscore 1 vector. Yeah? And if you have everything done all right, and you plug this into Matlab and push the enter button, this is here what you will get. Yeah? So the stock which has the lowest cumulative return in the first iteration has a return of minus 24.81% in this period from t minus 6 until t minus 1. So, and the stock that has the highest cumulative return in our sample period has a cumulative return of 29.19%. So now what you want to figure out now is, okay, where are those stocks that have the highest cumulative return that are here in the end of this vector, and where are those stocks that have the lowest cumulative returns that are at the beginning of this momentum underscore 1 vector. Now we do exactly the same thing that we have already done a couple of times here. Yeah. We want to define. We have 14 stocks in the sample, but it could be, as I told you, we can also have 500 stocks in the sample. And now we want to know, okay, if we use terrace sortings, where we have groups of 30% in the highest cumulative return group, then we have in the middle group 40% of the stocks, and in the other group is also 30% of the stocks. So in total, it must be, of course, 100% of the stocks. So we want to know, okay, which number is indicating the first group, which number is indicating the last group here. So, and of course we know we know already this is the fourth stock number 4, and this is stock number 9. Yeah. So what we do is we write C1 is floor, so we round down. And 0.3 times k is 14, so this is indicating the fourth group, the first group. Then we have C2 is floor 0.7 times k. This is what comes out is 9. We know that already. So then we know that 1, 2, 3, 4. So those guys here, we want to have in the group that we sell short. And those guys here, we want to buy. So now we want to know what are the marginal value for these guys here. So the marginal value is of course minus 9.62. So that's a cumulative return. That's the highest cumulative return of those stocks that are in the low cumulative return group. Yeah. And this guy here, this is the last stock, or this cumulative return is the corresponding cumulative return of the last guy, or the highest cumulative return in the medium cumulative return group. So we want to buy all those stocks that have a higher cumulative return than this value. It's the same logic that we had discussed earlier. So our C3 denotes that value here. This is minus 9.62, and it's defined as the fourth element, C1 is 4, of momentum underscore 1. So, and C4, which should be equal to this guy here, is equal to momentum underscore 1 from C2, and C2 is 9. So it's the ninth element in our momentum underscore 1 vector. Yeah. So then we do the same thing that we did already earlier. We define a group 1 vector which consists of zeros, and then we want to give it a 1 whenever the cumulative return is indicating that this corresponding stock should be in the low cumulative return. So this is exactly what we get out here. So we create a vector of zeros that have the same dimension as we have stocks in our sample. It has the same dimension as this guy here, our momentum vector, of course, 1 by 14 or 1 by capital K. So we have the inner for loop here again running from I1 to K. So, and whenever our momentum vector, where we store our cumulative returns in the same order as we have stocks in the sample, is smaller or equal to C3. So in C3 we already said it gives us this value here. Then it should get a 1. Yeah, it should be equal to 1. And otherwise, or else, we want to have a 0 in the corresponding element of our group 1 vector. Yeah? So that's it. Then we have to end the if and the for loop, and then we define the next group, the medium group, where we have the medium, the stocks that have a medium cumulative return, yeah, in the first iteration. And we do the same thing that we have actually already done. Yeah? So we again define a 0 vector that has the same dimension as we have stocks in our sample, and the same dimension as our momentum vector from I is 1 to capital K, and if momentum, if the cumulative return is larger than C3, and now again note that we have this really larger sign here. Here it was smaller or equal to. So then we have here, of course, to have the really larger sign. So when it's really larger than this guy here. And so this means here both conditions needs to be satisfied. So and the cumulative return should be smaller or equal to C4, and C4 we know already it gives us this value here. Then this vector should get a 1 because that it indicates that that the corresponding stock is in the medium performing group, but otherwise it should get a 0. And then those who have been listened carefully in this course, the group 3 vector can be, as an alternative to what we have here, we can simply define it as a vector of 1s minus group 2 minus group 1. Because if we sum up all these group vectors, what we should end up with is a vector of 1s. But here in this case, here this is an alternative. So again, so that we get the logic here, what's going on. So group 3 is again we formulate a 0 vector having the same dimension 1 by k, a row vector, and again we have an inner for loop running from I is 1 to capital K, and whenever the cumulative return that is stored in this momentum vector is larger than our marginal value C4, which is I think it's 12.21, then it should get a 1, because then it indicates that this stock is in the high cumulative return group, and otherwise it should get a 0. So now we are still in the first iteration. So we have determined the groups that we want to short and that we want to buy. We have to determine it based upon past information. And now we keep those portfolios, but we want to see what is the return if we keep those portfolios constant 1 period ahead, 1 month ahead in this case. So what do we do? How do we compound it? So we code the return of the loser portfolio. So now we multiplied the first group vector, the group 1 vector, that indicates us where are the loser stocks, those stocks that have the lowest cumulative return in our sample period. So we multiply this guy with our Y matrix. And the row index here is capital N plus T. T is 1 and N is 12. And we have here this double point here, and the column index denotes us, okay, we access all of the columns. And moreover, here's a transposed sign. So what does that mean? So we go to row n plus 1 because t is 1 in our first iteration. And in this row, we have the excess returns of all of our stock 1, 2, 3, and so on until 14. So we grab this guy out of our gross return matrix, and this is a 1 by 14, so we have to transpose it, then it becomes 14 by 1. Our group 1 vector is 1 by 14. 1 by 14 times this transpose 14 by 1 is 1 by 1. It's a scalar product. Yeah? Whenever the group 1 vector has a 1, we take this return here and sum it up. And whenever it has a 0, 0 multiplied by something is 0. So we neglect those returns that have a corresponding elements of 0 in this group 1 vector. Yeah. So we sum these guys up, and then we divide it by the sum of group 1. And this gives us the number of stocks in our group. And in our timeline, this is exactly what we want to have. In the first iteration, capital N is 12. Yeah. So the first forecast return is the time period t is 13. So the excess returns at t is 13 are our first 1 month ahead forecast, given that our t0 is is n equal to 12. That's the first iteration. So in the second iteration, everything moves now 1 month ahead. And then the forecast period is obviously n plus 2, which is t is equal to 14. This is also what comes out if you read the code carefully here. Yeah. So in the same manner, you compound the return of the medium portfolio group and the return of the winner portfolio group, yeah, using the group 2 and group 3 vectors that give us the position where to find the corresponding stores. So then we want to store the results. So you remember our results underscore group matrix is a capital T minus n by 3 matrix. Yeah. In the first iteration, T is 1, so the element 1, 1 in this matrix should be portfolio underscore 1, and that's, according to this line here, the return of the loser portfolio in the first iteration. The second element in the first row of our result in our result underscore group matrix is the return of the medium portfolio group. And finally, the third element, the last element in the first row of our result underscore group matrix is the corresponding portfolio return of our winner portfolio group. Yeah. And then the outer loop ends here. So, and now we go to the next iteration. Then T jumps to 2. So now everything moves one month ahead. N doesn't change, obviously, that's constant. So then here, T, we are now at 2. So, and this is overwritten here. The information that is in this vector here is overwritten. But here, this changes then, of course. Yeah. T is 2. This 5 doesn't change either. This is then 7. If T is 2, T plus 5, 2 plus 5 is 7, until 2 plus capital N minus 2. That's where we are here. This is 12. So we take the sum, which is the cumulative return of each of these, for all of the stocks for this time window here. Yeah. For I is 1 to capital K. This is what happens here. And then we do the same thing all over again. Yeah. So that's the same thing what happens here. And the forecast is then in the second iteration, capital N is 12 plus 2 is 14, and that's exactly what we want to have here. Yeah. This is clear to everybody what happens here. So that's how the momentum strategy works, or how we can easily get the portfolio returns. And I told you, this guy here, this is the heart of the code. If you change this single line, you would end up with a new strategy. Yeah. So what we have now gone through is the case with the 611 strategy. Yeah? So we skip 1 month, we go into the past 6 months, and we keep it, and we hold it 1 month ahead with those determined portfolios. And now my question is, for those who have been in the R&M course, why do we skip 1 month? So, yeah. So we skip 1 month because of the short-term reversal effect. So you remember this nice picture that I wrote you on the whiteboard about the return cycle. So this momentum effect is sort of autocorrelation, sort of using like a 1 year of information, or in this case half a year. We go half a year back into the past. We accumulate the returns half a year ahead, half a year into the past, or we accumulate the returns over the whole year period. If you take another strategy there. But the short-term reversal effect tells you that those stocks that have underperformed in the last months tend to outperform in the next months. So there's a negative autocorrelation going on if we consider the past month's return. It's the so-called short-term reversal effect. Yeah. And of course, this effect is only valid on a portfolio basis, obviously, like all of these asset pricing strategies. Yeah. So because we do not want that when we determine the portfolios that we invest in, the stocks, we do not want that our portfolios are poisoned or disturbed by this one month reversal effect. That somehow would poison our portfolios. So we want to get rid of that effect. So that's why we skip that month. Yeah. So, but now, how would we then implement this 12-1-1 strategy? This guy here. So that's not that difficult. So the only thing that we have to change in this code is this single line here. And what we have to do is we have to delete this +5, because then we start here at the first observation already. We go back to t-12, given that we are here, and we accumulate the returns over the entire period here, not skipping this first 5 months. So the only thing that changes is we take, let's take this away here. It's sum from capital Y, which is our exact return, our gross return matrix, T, double point, T plus capital N minus 2, comma I, and then close the parentheses. That's then our 12-1-1 strategy. Or in Novimark's terms, he refers to the 12-2 strategy. And then if you have read the paper from Novimark's, he suggests a trading strategy that takes into account cumulative returns from t-12, given that we are here. T-12 is then the first observation of our sample, until t-7, which is in essence the fifth guy here. So he accumulates these returns here in the beginning of the sample that are far away from t0. So, but otherwise that's everything. Yeah? The forecast period again is just 1 month ahead, and what we have to change in this code is simply, again, only this one line we have to change, and the corresponding code is then here sum from capital Y T T plus capital N minus 6, comma I. Once you write this line, you would get Novimark's popular 12 minus 7 strategy. And it's 12 minus 7 strategy. So I told you in the beginning of the lecture that I will tell you later on for why I chose this capital N. And the reason is simply that once you do it like that, whatever momentum strategy you code here, using that code, you always have the same forecast period. It starts always at t is 13. Whatever you choose for cumulative returns, it's 611 or 1211 or 776. It starts always at t is 13 for the first holding period or forecast. Does it make sense to you? If not, then please let me know. So that's the way how it works, and that's the way how I wrote the code like it did. But as I told you, of course, there are different ways how to write a momentum code or how to do this momentum sorts. That's one out of many possibilities. So and now, of course, what you can then do is you have this results underscore group matrix. So in the first column of this matrix, you have the return path of this loser portfolio, and in the third column of that matrix, you have the return path of the return evolution of the winner portfolio, given the forecast period, which is capital T minus n. So this is what you can do. You can plot this series. So, and you should by now already know how to do that. You would write plots, and then we need this parenthesis, and then also the other one. And then you would write results underscore groups, and then you would say, okay, double point 1, which means I want to have the whole first column vector of that matrix. Then you would leave here a space, and then results underscore groups, and then in parentheses double point 3. Here are in the third column are the returns of the winner portfolio. Then you would close this parenthesis and also the outer parenthesis. If you have this command and you push enter button, then Matlab spits you out the return evolutions. And as you see here, the blue line is the loser portfolio, and the green line is the return evolution of the winner portfolio across time. And again, what we see already here from this plot here, again, we see the start as effects of financial markets. We have volatility clustering going on. We have periods of low volatility here, and we have periods of high volatility, the financial crisis period, or here the dot-com bubble crash. We had very high volatility. And I told you in the beginning of the lecture, if you want to know if the strategy is if it actually generates excess returns after controlling for the market factor, we have to do an OLS regression where we regress this to pair series, the zero cost portfolio, on the market factor. So what I have done here is I have uploaded this data series, this result underscore group matrix into eViews, and what you see here is I regressed it simply. I regressed the time series of the winner portfolio, which is in this notation red 1/3. It's a winner portfolio. I regressed it simply on a constant term. So what you get here is the average return of that portfolio. And the average return is 1.42% per month with a t-statistic of 3.33. So the stocks in the winner group generated average returns of 1.42% per month in this time period, and the payoff is statistically significant on even a 1% level. But that's still no zero cost strategy. Yeah? This is just the return, the sample return, or the average return of the sample for those stocks that are in the winner group. It's still not a zero cost strategy. It's just a portfolio return. So what we see here is the average return, yeah, of the stocks that are in the medium performing group. And again, I took the return vector and we rested just on a constant. So what you get is then the average return, the sample average of that group, and it's 1.29 with a t statistic of 3.07. Yeah. You see, it's slightly lower than the winner portfolios. The winner portfolios had 1.42% per month. Medium portfolio, medium performing stocks had 1.29% per month. Now we come to the loser. So momentum underscore 1 are the returns of the loser portfolio, and they generate 0.99% per month with a t statistic of 2.12. Still significant on a 5% level. Yeah? P-value is 0.03. So what you would be supposed to do now, you have to subtract the winner portfolio, like the vector of the winner portfolio returns from this loser portfolio returns. Then we have the returns of the zero cost strategy. It's a difference between the winner group minus the loser group. That's what I have done here. So I regressed the difference of momentum underscore 3 minus momentum underscore 1. So the payoff differential is 0.42% per month with a t statistic of 1.21%. 1.21. So what does that mean? We have again the normal distribution here. And our critical values are 1.96 and minus 1.96. So a t statistic of 1.21 indicates that the zero cost strategy is statistically not different from zero on a 5% level. So the payoff series seems to be just more or less a white noise here. So what I have done then next, I regressed the zero cost portfolio on the market factor, which is the OMX 30 Stockholm minus the risk-free rate in excess form. So what we see then here, the payoff slightly increases of to 0.44% per month. This also slightly increases to 1.24. The loading against the market factor is slightly negative, but this list indicates that it's not significantly exposed to the market risk factor. So even after controlling for the market risk factor, after risk adjustment, the payoff remains statistically not different from zero. Then I did the same again, but I conditioned it on I took just the first observation, like the first subsample, and what you see then, the payoff for the raw return without risk adjustment of the zero cost portfolio is much higher. It's 0.90, it's almost 1%, and the t statistic is 1.7. So 1.7, what you see here is the p-value is 0.09. So 1.7 is, of course, it's smaller. It's below our critical value of 1.96. And on a 5% level, we would conclude this payoff is typically not different from zero. But if we would choose, for instance, a 10% significance level, then we would say, well, it is marginal significant, at least on the 10% level. So, and of course, now you can wonder, okay, why is that? And yeah, well, there can be many reasons for that. First of all, we have only 14 stocks in our sample. That's not much. And we have to use tercile sortings. Yeah? We have 30, 40, and 30%. And moreover, we have only a couple of observations, so we do not have a very long sample. So momentum is usually a property of a long time series, so you would need to have a much longer sample, and probably you would need to have much more stocks in your sample that you could basically, if you would widen the spread, if you would, for instance, choose instead of tercile sortings, decile sortings, where you have, if you have 500 stocks, then you would take like 10% of the stocks that have the highest cumulative returns in your portfolio, and you would sell those stocks that have the 10% lowest cumulative returns. Yeah, so the spread is much higher here. And the higher the spread, the higher is the average payoff in general. So if you would be supposed to code, if you would get more assets, and you would be supposed to and you would be asked, for instance, in a term paper to choose a decile sort, then obviously where you have to look is here. Yeah? Because if you choose decile sorts, this here is obviously then 0.1 times k. And k could be, for instance, 500 if you have the S&P 500. And this is then 0.9 times k, which is the 90% decile. And 0.1 would be then the 10%. It would give you the lowest 10%, and 0.9 would be then here. And then you can determine what stocks are here, above 90%. Yeah. And then, of course, what happens here, it depends on the question that you get. If you are just interested in the spread, then you can stop there. I mean, then you can basically, then you could, because you are just buying those stocks that are in group 3, and you sell those that are in group 1. You don't bother with all the stocks in the middle here. You would not need to make any changes here in the code. But if you would be asked to report the average return across the forecast period for all of the portfolios, like all of the decile for each of this group, because it could be that you're interested in, okay, you could be interested in seeing, okay, is there a linear spread between those groups? If we move from the loser group to the winner, there are 10 portfolios, yeah? And could it be that the payoff differential is a linear function that is linear increasing as we move from the first group to the 10th group? But maybe it's linear increasing, we don't know. Maybe it's exponentially increasing. We don't know that, or it could be that it's like flat, and then all of a sudden it jumps up, so that the payoff differential is generated by the extremes. We don't know that. So it could be that you are interested in determining the average return for the entire groups that you determine. So then, of course, then you need to do some changes here as well. You have to define, instead of 3 groups here, you have to define 10 groups. So it depends always on what you want to know. Is it clear to everyone? So are there any questions concerning the exam? The exam is obviously in January 11. January 11. And the term paper, I try to make it ready until Friday. How much time you want to have for the term paper?
A lot.
A lot. So you want to have time until after New Year's Eve, right?
Yeah. We would like to have some kind of vacation.
Vacation?
It's Christmas holidays.
Are you going to church?
No.
So?
I'll go to the church.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, then we have to have some complication here. So okay, so I mean the exam is on the 11th. So and when do you want to? How much time you need for it? We can maybe make it more democratic here. So what about the 15th of January? Okay, what about the 14th of January? Okay. So I mean the thing is, does it make sense to you? I mean to write the exam, and the next exam is I think in February, in the second week of February. So I mean does it make sense to you to have the results from the term paper before you write the second exam? If some of you want to write the second exam, who knows? I mean, for me, it doesn't matter. But if I would be you, I would make my decision if I would go for the second exam, yes or no. I would like to know the grade of the term paper beforehand.
How long do you need to how much time do you need to check the term papers?
For all of you? For all of the term papers?
Only for me.
For you? Probably 3 days.
3 days?
No, I don't know. It depends. Usually I make it like that you have to, so you have to write your code that you use, you have to put it into the appendix of the term paper. And then I ask you certain questions, and then you have to report certain figures. Yeah, and the code is just in case. So if I want to replicate what you do, then I can copy that into my program. Because all of you will get the same data, of course. So you basically write, I don't know, 8 pages maybe, or maybe it's even less. So you write just the answer to the question, but the code, the actual code, is in the appendix. So usually it doesn't take so much time to correct the term papers for me. So it's usually I can do this in 1 day to correct all the term papers together.
At the end of January?
So 31st of January. 31st of January is then.
I mean, is that we could probably prepare ourselves for the next exam, I guess.
Yeah, I mean then you have still 14 days.
Yeah.
You have still 14 days, yeah. Alright, so then, yeah, but I will then put it onto Moodle, on the Moodle page together with the term paper. I will put the term paper on Moodle, and then you have them time until I give them the details for the deadline is on the course on Moodle, and it's due then 31st of January. Yeah. Are there any more questions for the?
Yeah, what about the exam? What is it like you probably taught us already, but I don't know. Is it all the like the theoretical stuff we went through here, or?
Yeah. So basically, it could be so that I will probably I will ask some questions for that I want to know if you have understood what's going on here. Yeah, so some derivations, of course, will come, and then because you have to understand this matrix calculus. If you want to understand Matlab, you have to understand this for sure. So there's no way around it. And then I will also, that's the theoretical part, and then the practical part will be something like that. I give you a code, that I give you like a description of a case, and then I give you a code, and then in the code will be error, and then you have to figure out, okay, where's the error, and how would I do it correctly? So probably I will use some code that I went through here, and then I will make some small changes or so. Then you have to figure out, okay, why is it not working? So I will You know, if you do like a wrong coding, then Matlab will give you an error message, or it could also happen that you get a zero matrix, so that you have no entries in your matrix, and then you have to figure out, okay, why is that? It happened to me all the time. So this is like for new beginners. This happens for new beginners. You know, then what I did when I started to use Matlab, I put sometimes the matrix where I want to store my results in. I put it after the for loop, and of course then it's always overwritten. And then you're running, okay, why is there only zeros in? Because it's always in each loop it's overwritten again. Because you put something into this matrix and then you override it again with zeros. And of course then you have a matrix of zeros where you want to store the results, and then you have only one entry, and all the others are zero. And then that's an indication for that you probably put the matrix where you want to store the results in the for loop, but you should have it outside the for loop. Otherwise it's overwritten all the time. So these are some small errors that people do, also me, or that I did in the beginning. And of course, there's also some things that you by now should know, you know. So I had never this kind of lecture. I mean, I learned everything by myself. So I did not have any lecture in that university. So, and I think there's no other university in Finland who is actually offering that for master students of finance. Even though everybody knows that in the finance industry you need that program. That there's no way around. And you can choose Python. You can also use Python if you want. It doesn't matter. But if you do not want to fry burger, or if you do not want to deal with customer complaints, I mean, I suppose that no one here is studying like 5-6 years in order to fry burger at McDonald's, right? I guess you're not doing that. So you want to have a job, like a proper job where you can also do some sophisticated stuff. I suppose at least that. I would do that if I would be you. I would be target some sophisticated stuff, because of course you want to work 8 hours, 9-10 hours, and you don't want to fry burger. You get crazy if you do that 10 hours, you know, every single day. So you want to do something that you are engaged in. You want to have some challenge and expand your skills, and this is what gives you satisfaction. And you don't want a boring at the job. So you want to have a job as an analyst, of course. And then, if you want to work as an analyst, then you have to know this kind of stuff, because this is what you do as an analyst. You have project work, you have some routine work, but you have also project work, and the project work is where it gets exciting, where you do this interesting stuff. And if you have not the skills to do that, then there are thousands of engineers who do it instead. That's unfortunately how it is nowadays. So you have to compete in jobs in the finance industry with people from engineering, because they know the math. So, and you know, there's nowadays algorithmic trading is a big, it has become big and bigger and bigger. So there are new industries developing because we have more and more data available. Since 2000, time has changed. So we have more and more data, big data nowadays. So every single second we have a new stock price, and we have people are trading on that and writing their programs how to utilize certain trends in the data. And and not only finance industry, there's also other industries who want to work with Google also. Google, Apple. You know, all these new industries, they have a huge amount of customer data, and they want to that someone analyzes this data, you know, and they get highly paid jobs. So it's nowadays called, I think it's called business analytics or something like that. But yeah, every industry needs these people. So if you know this kind of stuff, well, it's pretty easy. And I have quite many of the students who took this course, they told me, they came to me afterwards and said, yeah, great, and so because I have this in my CV, I got to the next interview at Nordea, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, this is what people nowadays want to, or the industry nowadays requires. So, just get familiar with this stuff, and the more you know, the better you're off. Yeah, otherwise, I think that's it. time to go home. Good luck.